Hello everybody and welcome to the December Rivals tier list. So this is going to be a full list of all the commanders and units in Rivals and where I believe they should be ranked in terms of strength. This is obviously within the meta game as well, so some things that might be quite strong individually will have lower ratings due to the fact they're just not very good in the current meta game. Alright, so the first one we're going to talk about is what does each rating mean. So S tier is god tier units. These things are overpowered. These need nerfs. Anything in S tier is something that I would say needs a nerf. Like it's just too strong, and they're just dominating the metagame right now. A tier is your very good units. These are the ones you're going to see in most of the good decks. Very, very common, powerful units. B units are acceptable, fine units. Nothing wrong with them. I think in an ideal world, if the game was perfectly balanced, everything would be in B tier. So this is pretty much where I think things should be, is in B tier. C tier is things that aren't completely horrible, but like they're just not great right now. So either things that are just bad in the metagame at the moment, or things that are a little bit on the weak side. And D tier is absolutely terrible. Just don't play it. This is horrible. Like basically never play these. Obviously sometimes they'll be good, but I would never recommend them really. I think they're pretty much terrible units. Alright, so let's first take a look at the commander list. Here you can see November tier list, and then we'll turn into the December tier list. So as you can see, Liang is up to the absolute tippy top of S tier. Liang is absolutely disgusting. It's just completely gross, and instead of getting a nerf like everyone expected, he got a buff. They called it a nerf, but actually it reduced the cost by 10, so it functionally was more of a buff than a nerf. Like they'd reduced the hit points as well on the drone, but yeah, it ended up being more of a buff than a nerf. So, yeah, for some reason, they made Liang even stronger. Absolutely insane. Easily the best commander in the game. It's just not close anymore. The healing is disgusting. The pad stealing is disgusting. It's just absolutely outrageous. Liang is completely broken right now. No idea why they haven't nerfed him. We've got Seth between S and A tier. Seth is probably the best Nod commander right now, but that's simply because of the Shade deck wants to play Seth. Other things of note is Solomon's up to B tier. Solomon's quite good now. Solomon at 130 cost is a much better tempo play. Like 130 is a lot more reasonable than 150. And also he's bugged, so he does more base damage than he should. So now if you win a missile, you can do a toxic base kill strategy where you iron cannon someone's base twice, and that'll do about 40% of the base health, and then you just need to finish it off with things like jump jet troopers. Jade has been bumped down to B tier. This one's going to be a bit controversial. The Jade base kill does still work with Chem Warriors and with Chem Buggy, but now it's much more reliant on actually getting those units there, and I think that's a much more reasonable place for Jade to be. It's still pretty miserable, and maybe Chems are still too good. That's a different discussion, though. I think the actual Jade thing is fine now. The only issue now is, are chems too beefy? Is it too easy to get chem troopers to the base? Because I don't think anyone really has a problem with chem buggy base kills, because that's a thing you can easily stop. It's really just chem warriors that everyone complains about. So chem warriors might be the issue now. I don't think Jade is. But you can't kill the base with just vision anymore, which is what made Jade completely outrageous. So that was a great nerf. And Jade is very, very weak in combat situations. It's very, very difficult to use Jade as a tempo play like Solomon, because you need clouds to do it. Any good player can dodge the missile with almost any unit in the game. So yeah, Jade, I put it back to B tier, but obviously the base kill is still strong, but it's you can't do it without vision anymore. So you can't just do it with vision. You do need to get a chem warrior there, or a chem unit of some kind. So I do think it's a lot more reasonable now, and that's why Jade is down in B tier. Okay, let's take a look at Nod. Here you can see the Nod November rankings, and then here is the December rankings. So the big changes, obviously, first of all, the Shade, the new unit, has come out. Goes straight in S tier. Most broken unit the game has ever seen. It's just absolutely outrageous. No idea what they were thinking with this thing. Like, some numbers have obviously gone wrong when balancing this before it came out, because it costs like half what it should, or it does twice as much damage as it should. It's just outrageous. The unit is completely broken. It is the most broken unit Rivals has ever seen. If there was a tier above S, Shade would be in that tier, but S is the absolute top, so that's where it lives. I would put it higher if I could. This thing is completely broken. I have no idea what's going on. They have to nerf it. It's insane. All right, other units. So the stealth tank has moved up to A. Stealth Tank's actually not that good right now because of Shade, but it's a lot stronger against the other best deck in the game, which is the Razorback decks. Those tend to play Razorbacks and Mohawks. Stealth Tank's quite a lot better against those decks. It's still not great, it's still not a good answer to them, but it's a lot better than it was since there's so much of an air meta now. So yeah, Stealth Tank is a very powerful option. So Stealth Tank's up to A. Fanatics and Bikes both got just nerfs. Like, they needed nerfs and they deserved what they got, in my opinion. And now they're both at A instead of S. I don't think these units are just completely broken anymore. I think Bikes are about where they should be. Like, Bikes, they're still very strong, but they're not completely dominant like they were. Obviously, the fact that the Bikes got nerfed and Razorback didn't was insanity, because Razorback should have been nerfed, and both should have been nerfed. I'm not arguing. I don't think the Bike nerf was a mistake. I think it was a great change. It's just insane they didn't nerf the Razorback at the same time. Fanatics are also down a little bit because they did get a vehicle damage nerf. They're still roughly the same as they were. The main difference now is just that the Razorback meta has made Fanatics a lot worse. So that's the main reason they're down from S. Not really an objective strength thing, more of a metagame thing. They're just a lot weaker in this metagame. So that's the main reason they're down to A. They are also a little bit weaker. Laser drones are now in B. Laser drones are exactly the same as they've always been, but there's no reason to ever play them now that Shade exists. Any deck that had laser drones in it, you should replace laser drones with Shade, and that's a massive upgrade to your deck. So that's why laser drones are in B tier. They're fine, but you should just never play them, because Shade is just strictly better. So that's why they've been bumped down to B. In C tier, we now have the artillery, which it's just not as good as it was. Like, we're in an air game meta now. Artillery doesn't really beat Razorback deck. It's useless against Shade. It's just not good anymore. Like, so it's been pushed down to C. There are still some decks that artillery will beat, but most decks in the metagame aren't weak to artillery now. And we've got Tick Tank and Scorpion who've been moved down to C tier. I never thought I'd see the day when Scorpion was not a good unit. Scorpion has been amazing since Rivals came out, but we finally reached that point. Again, Shade and Razorback are the two decks in the format now. They're the best decks, not close, and neither of them really cares about a Scorpion tank. So yeah, Scorpion, unfortunately, finally has been knocked off its throne. It's just not a very good unit right now. Tick suffers from the same problem. You just don't really want to play tanks right now. Tanks are not great. We'll talk about the Predator in a minute. Predators are better than Scorpion right now. We'll talk about that when we get to GDI. But yeah, Scorpion is just not great in the air meta. The unit itself is still good, obviously, but it's just bad in this metagame. I don't think it makes sense to play Scorpions anymore. You just don't want to be a War Factory deck right now. That's not a place you want to be, unless you're like a Fortress deck of some kind. Avatar is also down to C tier. This is roughly for the same reasons. It just isn't the win condition it used to be. It can die to Mohawks and it can die to Shades, and those are the main things people play. So Avatar just doesn't dominate the battlefield like it once did. So yeah, it's down to C, and it still loses to Mammoth Tank as well, which is its main competition. So yeah, unfortunately Avatar taking a bit of a hit here. Isn't a great unit right now. So yeah, all of those are down in C mostly because of metagame rather than actual unit strength. Like, the units are still objectively quite powerful. They're just not good in the metagame. Alright guys, let's take a look. Oh, also I want to talk about Flames quickly. Flames and Shocks obviously received that speed buff. I still just don't think they cut it. I think the problem is that their combat stats are not great. They struggle against Militants and Riflemen, which cost 1/4 as much. They're still worse than Fanatics. Razorback now exists. There's a lot, like, people playing Venom in the Shade deck, and Razorback exists, both of which punish them quite heavily. So yeah, I think Flames and Shocks, I think speed buff was a help, but I think they're still complete trash, and I wouldn't play them. Alright, let's move on to GDI. Here you can see the November rankings, and then we'll move on to the December rankings. Now, obviously, the big one is Razorback is now S tier. It was in A tier simply because it hadn't been around long enough. It wasn't clear how broken it was until people developed the correct Razorback strategies and correct Razorback decks. At first, it seemed strong but not completely insane, and then people realized that you can form a wall of missile troopers, and it's just impenetrable with a Razorback holding the ground against infantry. So yeah, that deck, basically, the combination of the Missile Troopers plus the Razorback is just so disgusting. It's dominating the tournament scene completely. The only thing that stands up to it is Shade decks, and at the moment, Razorbacks and Shades are just getting banned in tournament play because they're too good. So yeah, Razorback is definitely broken. It definitely needs nerfs. It's not as broken as Shade, but the Razorback deck is equally as broken as the Shade deck, I think. So yeah, it definitely needs nerfs. It's insane that it didn't get nerfed. But yeah, I've already talked about that, and it's just crazy that Razorback hasn't been touched yet. Absolutely needs nerfs. Alright, let's move on to the A tier units. Most of them are still pretty much the same. All the GDI Air is still up here. GDI Air is just the best way to play GDI right now. The Slingshot has moved up to A. This is because everyone is just air. All the decks are air decks. Slingshot is one of the few units in the game that can deal with Razorback. Almost nothing else can catch it. It just hides behind missiles, but Slingshot has 2 range, so you can actually protect some of your units from Razorback. So Slingshot has become an absolutely critical part of the metagame. It's also just a disgusting unit. For those of you who watch my videos a lot, you'll know I just hate Slingshot. I think it's a really terrible design, but it is extremely powerful in this metagame. It's one of the best units right now. But yeah, I do hate Slingshots and wish they didn't exist. But right now they are they're critical in the Razorback deck to fight mirrors, so they are very, very good right now. I've also moved Mammoth Tank up to A. This is because one of the few decks that actually beats the Razorback deck in tournament play is Mammoth Tank. Mammoth Tank just doesn't care about Razorback. It's got so many hit points it won't die to a Mohawk, and it doesn't care about Razorback at all. It just ignores it, which allows you to move up your anti-air units and deal with the Razorbacks and Mohawks, because you can push their ground units off the map and while surviving the Razorback Mohawk salvos. So yeah, Mammoth Tank is one of the few things that does actually beat up on the Razorback deck. So that's been moved into A tier. Missiles are also now A tier. This is again because of their combination with the Razorback. Razorback missile is like one of the best things you can be doing right now. So yeah, missiles are now up to A tier simply because that extremely powerful deck is basically just built upon those 2 units. Sandstorm is also now A tier. Same reason again. It's one of the few ways to break a Razorback mirror is a Sandstorm. Seeing a lot of tournament play now. In combination with Liang, it's absolutely disgusting. It has way too many hit points. A Liang Sandstorm will beat 2 Missile Troopers, which is completely insane because it's not meant to be good against infantry at all. Like, Missile Troopers are the hard counter, and 2 of them will still lose to a Sandstorm if the Sandstorm has Liang drone. Now, arguably that's because Liang is broken, but the Sandstorm is extremely... Like, the stats on it are obscene. It's way too strong. So, I've put it into A tier now. The metagame also is heavily favouring it right now because of how much air there is. It's very, very good against air. It is weak to shade, but it is very good against everything else. And it is insane in combination with Liang, which is obviously the best commander right now. Let's talk about B tier. So B tier, the Predator's still B tier, whereas the Scorpion has moved to C. This is because I think the Predator goes really well. It goes a lot better in the Razorback decks, whereas Scorpion does not make any sense in a shade deck. So the Predator does actually do quite a lot of work against things like Pit Bulls and against opposing Slingshots. It can be really good in that deck. I think the Predator, its beefy nature at the moment just makes it a lot better than the Scorpion. Like, mobility is not as good as having that extra beef and the extra hitting power. So yeah, Predator's still in B, whereas Scorpion moved down. Jump Jet's got a buff to their hit points. They're actually pretty good now. They're in B tier. They got the hit point buff with no accompanying cost increase. So they're just like they're just a solid unit right now. They're really, yeah. So similar to how Missiles Razorback is good, like Jump Jets. Basically, it's very easy to protect your anti-vehicle infantry at the moment in this metagame, and that means that they're just a lot stronger. And Jump Jets with this hit point buff, they're actually a really nice unit at the moment. They're also one of the few ways to actually deal with a Sandstorm. So yeah, Jump Jet's up to B. Hammerhead's also up to B. Again, it's the air meta. All the anti-air units are better than they were because of this. Hammerhead is a great answer to Mohawks and Razorbacks. And it's one of the key parts of the Mammoth deck, which is one of the reasons it's moved up to B. Let's take a look at C tier. So snipers are down to C. They were A last month. Basically, the advent of the Razorback. Razorback has pushed snipers out of the metagame almost completely. You can dive even a slingshot with Razorbacks and still kill snipers. And then you're trading 60 for 50 even if you lose the Razorback. So it doesn't even feel that bad. You also get position on your opponent because their snipers mean they can't stop your missiles pushing up anymore. But yeah, snipers have basically just been negated by the Razorback. They're just bad now. I mean, they're okay, but yeah, I wouldn't play them in a Razorback metagame. They just get eaten by Razorbacks and it feels terrible. The only time you can play them is in like a slingshot deck, and then you're playing slingshot and sniper, and I don't like those kind of decks that much. So yeah, I wouldn't play that in tournaments for sure. So yeah, snipers are way down. Zone troopers are also down. This is because they lose again to Razorback. Like, basically the whole metagame right now is dictated by Razorbacks and Shades. So the unit's power level is based on being able to beat those 2 units and those 2 decks. and the Zone Troopers just don't beat Razorbacks. They're way too expensive, and they will lose. They'll win 1v1, but they'll lose to 2 Razorbacks, and Razorbacks are more mobile, and they're cheaper, and they come from a cheaper building. So yeah, Zones, it's not a good day for Zone Troopers. They are struggling a lot against the Razorback metagame. Yeah, so that's pretty much everything. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Obviously, the balance right now I think is not great. Like I said, a perfectly balanced game would have every unit in B, in my opinion. And at the moment, GDI's got a ton of A's. We've got quite a lot of C's in Nod. Yeah, like the game is not great right now. Shade and Razorback desperately need huge nerfs, and hopefully we'll see that very, very soon, because those 2 units are just absolutely dominating the meta game. They're getting banned in tournaments, like I said earlier, and they're not that much fun. I think that those having just 2 decks is very, very limiting and is massively reducing the fun of Rivals. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed that one, and yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments, and I'll see you next time.